Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the transformative journey into the heart of climate finance and gender diversity. Today, I'm thrilled to be your guide as we navigate through the rich landscape of insights and experiences shared by our esteemed panelists. Let's give a warm welcome to the distinguished guests, Mira Swedi, Director of Value Creation at Mubadala, Wafa Al-Ali, Executive Director, Debt Capital Markets at First Abu Dhabi Bank, Dr. Lamis Al-Qaisi, General Manager, Sheikha Khawla Foundation, and Michelle Lee, founder of Clever Carbon. Their collective expertise spans finance, sustainability, and climate action. Today, we embark on a dialogue that explores the dynamic role of diversity in shaping financial strategies that drive our climate initiatives forward. Let's dive into the intersection of finance, sustainability, and the voices that matter the most, those of women and youth. So I'll start the conversation by asking our dear guest, Michelle Lee, about explaining how she got into sustainability, your experience in funding and investor journey. So please tell us more about that.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for joining our conversation. My name is Michelle, and I'm the founder of Women in Climate and Clever Carbon, but I actually started my career in tech. I used to work for companies like Salesforce and DocuSign, and I didn't have a linear career path where I entered sustainability right away, but I always enjoyed being sustainable because to me it was common sense, using a reusable bag, reusable coffee mug. I went vegetarian in 2017. And it wasn't really until 2020, when COVID happened, that my entrepreneur journey really accelerated. In London, I was living at the time, I would walk by this park every day. And on Mondays, it was particularly a difficult time to walk through the park because everyone had been there over the weekend. And so the garbage bins were full of single-use plastic, of containers, of beer bottles and beer cans, and just spilling onto the sidewalk all over the lawns. And I knew at that point that I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. And so I started my first climate project called Clever Carbon. And the goal at Clever Carbon is to teach people about carbon footprint in a really hip and fun way. So my footprint is 22.1 tons annually. The average in the US is about 17.0, and globally we're at 6.3, and the UN states that we need to be at 2.1 by 2030. So the idea is that what gets measured gets changed, and when we understand the actual number of our actions and our impact, it's harder to sweep it under the carpet because we know the numbers. So for example, a vegetarian meal is 600 grams of CO2 emissions, a serving of chicken is around 1,300, and a serving of beef is 7,700. So this was a side project. It was not meant to be a way for me to sustain my living. But then I found myself in a place where I had left my tech job and I had Clever Carbon, and I was like, okay, well, now what I do? Because I was just trying to educate people. We have a carbon footprint quiz, and my idea was, okay, I have the quiz and it's scalable because anyone can take it and it's free. But now I don't have a job, so what do I do? So I started going to some of the networking events and talking to individuals and talking to investors, and I didn't find that people had the passion for literacy and education that I did, and it was really hard to prove out the investment opportunity for an education platform. And today I still haven't cracked that nut, but I can say that we are an official partner to the NBA, the National Basketball Association. So if you go to nba.com/carbon, you'll find our carbon footprint quiz, and I've been able to partner with incredible firms like Mubadala to bring carbon literacy to fruition. So it hasn't been smooth sailing, and I'm still learning, but definitely we've gotten a little bit further than we were at the beginning.
Amazing. I'm super pleased to hear about that. There are a few points that I'd like to stress. One is that something we always say, coming from a youth council perspective, is that you don't always have to study sustainability to end up in a sustainable job. You live in this world, you can see the world somehow collapsing around us and climate change becoming a serious threat to our existence. And is just using the skills you have acquired through whatever major you have studied, whatever career you have been in, and just taking that and seeing how you can make sense with sustainability and climate change, how we can participate. And your experience is a great example of that. We personally in our council, we run few sessions to convince people that you really don't have to study sustainability to work in it. Whatever skill you have, I'm sure it is needed, and I'm sure that you can use it for sustainability. So there is a very interesting part from your journey that I'd like to stress, and quantifying things. This is amazing. It's like counting, because I checked your platform, and it's like, guys, when we count our steps, when like walking and we count steps and like, oh, did I achieve this many steps? It's like that way you count your footprint and your carbon print. Sorry, and it is fascinating because once we see numbers as individuals, just the way when you see your steps, you're like, oh, it's half day and I haven't walked that much. That's where change starts happening. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. We'll move now to Dr. Lamis Al Qaisi. And my question to you is about what we just talked about in the room. We're talking about her experience about establishing a unit in her company, your experience as a woman, and what was the role of other women in supporting you in that. Please let us know more about it.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me in such a big event and a very important event. And as usual, the UAE is a pioneer in these initiatives and these events. Way back some time ago, I started in banking, and at that time we established a unit, not because we wanted to establish the unit, but it was forced by us, by regulators. If without the operational risk unit, we won't be able, or we won't be recognized in the international scenes of banking. So the management started saying, okay, we need somebody to head this initiative, operational risk, and I was just a fresh graduate joining the bank. They said, okay, Dr. Lamis, it's your role. Of course, my background, my PhD is nothing to do with banking, it's nothing to do with risk. My PhD is cross-cultural management, which I looked at the different styles of management, but anyway, I accepted the challenge. I was raised I'm happy to say, by a very open-minded, visionary dad and family, and had the support of them. So at the age of 14, they sent me to a boarding school in England, which was not the scene at that time. And especially my dad had a lot of objection, not only from the family, but also from his friends and his colleagues. So that enforced me into accepting challenging, believing in what I do, and if I believe in something, I will do it, and I'll make it a success. So in the banking sector, it was such a challenge for me because I was we established a unit, but it was one-man unit that had to be looking after operational risk, business continuity, and CSR, which was at that time, it was not recognized and not appreciated. And we faced a lot of, let's say, rejections from the management team. At that time, the management team had a very traditional way of management. They didn't like change, yet alone a mindset and a organizational cultural change to how we look about things. We always got to push back when I used to present to the higher level management. They said, well, we've been here for 40 plus years, we don't need this, we don't want this change, we don't want business continuity. What you're talking about, we are in the UAE, we're in a safe haven. So it was a big challenge, especially coming from a woman to a board of directors where all men, and a UAE national who is a fresh graduate as well, to persuade them to accept and to invest in these topics. But Alhamdulillah, we were the pioneer. The bank was one of the first banks in the UAE to establish that unit. And at that time, we were, and still is, an international bank. We had presence all over the world, and we implemented this all over the world, and we were a pioneer in that. And the role model for me here in the UAE, of course, was al-Imarat Sheikha Fatima, Allah yahfadha, where she established and she put the footstones for the education of women in the UAE. She used to go with Allah yarhamah Sheikh Zayed, our father, and to the families, to the tribes, and encourage them to put their girls to school. And she actually went and sat in some classes herself to encourage the at that time the people and the fathers who were rejecting their daughters to go to school or get education. And look at where we are now.
Amazing. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for the resilience, and you're such a great, a great role model for people, for especially for young women. I feel like as women, we're always reluctant to ask for more, especially young women in male-dominated industries like finance. And about male-dominated industries, there is, especially in the UAE, a lot of women in finance, and even if you go to a bank, you see a lot of women, yet there is this perception that it's a male industry, It has been male-dominated, yet today, I think there is a lot of women, but we don't associate women with money. We don't associate women with bold moves, with standing for yourself and for your department and making sure that it's there because it's important, it's essential, and you want it to be there. And you were visionary, you were ahead of your time when you established that unit, and you managed to get it there. So that is, to me, that is fascinating, especially given the time and the consequences of that time and how the world was looking at a time. So again, congratulations.
And we were part of the units that actually put the regulation for the UAE for operational risk and business continuity. So it's a big achievement, actually.
Amazing. And look, you founded something great, and it was founded by women, by a woman, and yet still we think about any financial success as if it's like a male-dominated thing. It's like there must have been some few men that got a deal and did something. And the reality, especially in the UAE, I remember as a kid, I would go to banks and my mom wouldn't trust anyone but female bankers. And she's like, they know better. They will get us whatever we want. And I was like, yeah. And I think it's this mindset, taking your kids, allowing them to trust women in male-dominated fields, telling them that there are women and trust them and they can do, I don't want to say they can do way better than men, but they are just as good and maybe sometimes better than them. So thank you for sharing your experience. I think it's really inspiring. I'll go now to Mira. Lovely having you, Mira, here. And I'd like to ask you about integrating gender diversity into financial strategies for climate initiatives to contribute to more effective and sustainable outcomes. How are you doing that?
Thank you, Shahad. It's a pleasure to be here today alongside Wafa, Dr. Lamis, and Michelle. Maybe let me take a step back and just talk a little bit about Mubadala. For those of you that are not familiar with Mubadala, Mubadala is one of Abu Dhabi's tools to invest and diversify the economy of Abu Dhabi and increase the GDP of the UAE in diverse ways. So us being here today in the Energy Transition Hub really shows you that we are transitioning away our GDP away from energy into other sectors, and Mubadala is leading that transition. Now, one thing that we know is that diversity is key in everything. And so gender diversity in the workplace is extremely important for us. And that's how Mubadala is. We are an extremely diverse workforce. And because of this diversity, we have been able to bring optimal results and increase our performance. Now let's take a step back away from Mubadala and talk about the UAE more generally. Today in the UAE, if we look at women, let's say within the, public sector, 66% of our public sector is female-led. And if we're talking about finance, let's talk about the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance today, 60% of its workforce is also made of women. So we do have a lot of very credible women that are working in the finance field and that are also working on green finance initiatives, which I think is extremely important. Now, part of my role in Mubadala as well is to create synergies for our companies. We want our companies to have optimal results. And so we always look for diverse companies that allow us to achieve those results. And when we, maybe a little bit to Michelle's point, when we look at female founders, it is very difficult for us to find female founders today. It's not impossible. We do have female founders, especially in the region, but we don't have enough female founders. And female founders, especially within the sustainable space and within the climate founders that are working on climate initiatives, they are really finding it difficult to raise capital, not only in the region, but globally. If we look at 2021, which was, like the founders like to say, it was a party year. Companies were raising money left, right, and center. However, female founders in the US only raised 2% of that money. Female founders in Europe only raised 5% of that money. So being inclusive and ensuring that we bring diversity to the workplace, especially on sustainable projects and especially in green finance, is very important. Thank you.
Amazing. I'd like to point out a very interesting point that you have mentioned. When it comes to green finance and sustainability, nature, as people study it, has been hugely associated with women. So you talk about Mother Nature, we talk about nature as being a womanly thing, and a lot of studies have also shown that it's a very masculine act to destroy nature. So there is this gender narrative when we look at nature and about climate change and saving nature and saving the environment. Yet still, like I was yesterday at the Blue Zone, and I can see that it's packed with men. You know, there is a lot of women, but it's still packed with men. You go to negotiation rooms when it comes to climate change. You go to people who make decisions about climate change, and you see a lot of men. Even though we always assume that it's a womanly topic, and must be a lot of women there. So, and again, it's like finance. You think it's a male-dominated one, and there is a lot of women. And I feel like the common pattern is that there is a lot of misconception around where women should be, and where women can give, and where women can kind of have a meaningful participation. And through this panel, we can see that women can have meaningful participation in everything and in anything, and especially in topics which we find challenging, and topics that we don't necessarily think women can get the job. So thank you, Mira, for pointing the statistics. I think nothing speaks better than numbers. And I love referring back to how we think that we are, globally, just as a collective global community, that we're there when it comes to gender equality, yet the numbers that Amira has mentioned show us something that is, that isn't necessarily a reflection of what we think. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I'll go now to Wafa, and I hope you've had a great time and you've enjoyed the conversation so far.
Thank you for having me, yes.
And I'd like to ask you about your thoughts about having fewer women in finance, and what strategies have proven successful in encouraging more women to pursue career in finance and achieve leadership roles. So tell us your secrets.
I think it has a lot to do with what you have just mentioned, with misconceptions and stereotypes. When you walk into a branch, when you walk into any financial building, you will see actually more women on the ground, yet people still believe it's a male-dominated industry. So stereotypes has a lot to do with it. Another factor I would say is the work-life balance. Because of work-life balance, people straight assume that this is going to be a more male-dominated industry. However, I would say, if you look at recent years, especially with the adaptation of environmental, social, and governance practices and institutions, we've seen a dramatic shift in this angle. We've seen more females being included in the finance industries. We've seen more programs, mentorship programs, and career development plans targeted at younger women so that they're more interested in the finance field. We're seeing more work-life balance being offered in the form of flexible hours, remote working options. So all of that have been offered so that we see more and more representation of women in finance and empowerment. So with the inclusion of sustainability, ESG, that will only increase this representation.
Amazing, amazing. And I love the point you have mentioned on work-life balance. I think this is one of the critical things for women to be involved in any sector and industry, and for everyone. But we have again, as you mentioned, these stereotypes that men can work from 8 to 8, for example, 12, 14 hours, and women can't, and that men should sacrifice their work-life balance and women should keep it, and therefore women shouldn't be in different fields. But having that, having work-life balance and promoting for more flexible hours has been proven to be more empowering for women.
It's empowering, I would say, even for everyone,
Exactly.
men and women
Exactly.
equally. Yeah.
Yep, it is. It is a very empowering strategy. And when we talk about sustainability today, we're not only talking about having green finance and having more sustainable projects, we're also talking about the quality of people's life that are working within one industry. We're talking about work-life balance. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about physical health. And all these things can't be achieved unless we have a sustainable system that takes into account people's life and well-being. It's not only about business, and business is about people, so it's about people and business at the same time.
I think, Shahad, you make a very good point there when you talk about sustainability. When women get into different fields, especially within finance, they need to also have a sustainable career path.
Exactly.
One great example, I think, Wafa, the FAB CEO, Hana Rastamani, an excellent example of a very good Emirati female that is at the forefront of the financial services industry. Even though today, globally, based on a McKinsey study that was, I think it's 2022, about 18% of the world's C-suite are female. So we do have a long way to go. But we have very good examples and very prominent examples here in the UAE within the finance sector as well.
From your experience at Mubadala, can you share with us some of the approaches, the good practices that you guys have been following in this field?
For sure, definitely. I think we have as well Aliazia Al-Kuwaiti here sitting right in front of me. She's one of our senior team members at Mubadala and senior leaders. With Mubadala, I think the key word here is inclusivity is a priority. And when we are inclusive, we can progress very well. And when we progress very well, then we can get real, sustainable outcomes that are good for us as an organization, but also good for the GDP and for the well-being of our people and their prosperity. Now, within Mubadala, maybe I can share a little bit of a personal story.
Please do.
I started in Mubadala very young. I was 19 years old. I was actually going for an internship. But I was asked by HC if I was willing to join the CFA program. And I said no, because I wanted to go on summer vacation with my family. So I came back after the summer. I just graduated, so I wanted some time off. I graduated, I came back after the summer, and I said, hey, I really want to join the CFA program now. They said, oh, can you wait until the next batch? I said, no, I don't have time. It's September, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So I forced them. I forced my way into the CFA program, studied for 2 months, and I passed. So it was amazing start for me because everyone said that you will not pass and you will not make it and you'll have to repeat the CFA program. But I was able to do that. So I think within Mubadala, not only within Mubadala, but generally speaking, you're never going to get what you're worth. You're going to get what you negotiate. So you have to negotiate your way through whatever it is you want to do. And I think that's something that we were, as Mubadala people, we have this embedded in us. We always want to strive to achieve more. We always want to not get what we're worth, but get what we negotiate.
Amazing. That is a brilliant mindset. I really commend you for that, and I think it's really encouraging to hear from young women like yourself about how it is important to negotiate, and as well as from Ms. Wafa about how it is never take no for an answer. And I know as women, we sometimes hesitate, we're like, because sometimes a lot of women are being brought up in a way that, okay, if a man tells you no, then you have to stop. If someone older than you tells you no, then you have to stop. We're never taught about how to negotiate, and I think negotiation is an amazing skill that we need to pass on everything. And it shows something that is more than, as you mentioned, it's just not what we need, it's what we're worth of, And for women, negotiate your way through things and never settle for less, and always prioritize yourself. We're always seen as, the people who are supposed to sacrifice and give our time and give everything. And I think that has to change. And it's evident that it has changed by your experience and Dr. Wafa's experience and all of our amazing panelists' experience to negotiate, ask for more. And it shows that we're prioritizing ourselves. And it is a priority to prioritize ourselves, if I may say. Ms. Michelle, I'd like to ask you about your thoughts on what do you think is not important to have more women as entrepreneurs, but also to have more women as investors? So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so for the past year and a half, I have been leading a group through Women in Climate. And Women in Climate is a nonprofit, and we aim to create a joyful and safe space for more women to learn and talk about climate. And an important component is that every job can be a climate job. So that's why it's Women and Climate and not Women in Climate. But one of the reoccurring themes that have come up is women entrepreneurs. It's a struggle getting funding, finding capital. And I think women entrepreneurs, it's disheartening, and they have to work extra hard, and that also prevents more women from entering the field of entrepreneurship. And as Mira said, inclusivity and diversity are important for a business success, and we need more women in this field. What I have noticed is that, there's a lot of stats around entrepreneurs getting funded that are women, but what about women investors? Let's go upstream of that. How do we get more women actually handing out the capital? Because women have different values. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. We just have different values. And the way that we measure success is more complicated, more diverse as well. And my thought is that if we can empower more women to go upstream and start investing and handing out the capital, not only will it be a more friendly environment for women entrepreneurs, but for all of the other startups and entrepreneurs that are not women, they have to now adhere to some women values as well. And maybe we can flip the dominoes by going upstream as well.
Wow. I don't think that is brilliant. I also think that, as Mira mentioned, inclusivity isn't only having more women on board. It's also about having an environment that is encouraging to women, that would allow them to succeed, that would allow them to, grow and level up. And I feel like having more women as investors would require an environment that would encourage more women to become more investors. Do you have any examples of things that you'd like to see in the general financial environment that you think would encourage more women to be join?
I'm right now trying to explore angel investing. I'm not an investor myself, but I want to be because I want to encourage more women and learn and then teach other women.
I think angel investing is amazing. They say once you get stung by the ventures bug, then you can't go back. You always have to keep investing. I do this personally, not in Mubadala, but personally I do love investing in ventures, especially ventures that are run by women.
Amazing. I mean, that is, and I know that there is a lot of women now, especially during COVID, and with the diversification of how you could invest and the different ways you could invest. I see a lot of women are investing. I personally have friends who do that, and I'm like, guys, can we please have a session and teach each others? And they do it. It might take me 10 more sessions to get in there, but they've been doing it, to be honest. And I just love, because there is also the stereotype about why women gather and what women talk about. And it's always like, yeah, women would join and talk about bags and clothes and all of that. And even some bags are investments. So we do know how to invest. We do know how to get in there. And when we gather, we don't gossip. We do talk about serious stuff. We talk about money. We talk about the next 10 years. We talk about private jets. We talk about a lot of things that aren't necessarily silly stuff. So whenever, if you're a man and whenever you see women talking about something, it must be something important. And I really appreciate that. And I love the mindset of sharing knowledge. And I think this is a mindset that as women we have. We always want to help out other women. We want to help out our daughters. We want to help out anyone who wants to join an industry, and then maybe we group and we become, a group of women investors. So I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. So thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. Wafa, I have another question for you. And I'd love to hear your perspective on how can partnerships between financial institutions, women organizations, and government agencies be leveraged to create a comprehensive and sustainable approach to women's financial empowerment? So how can everyone partner up to help us save the world?
I think it's extremely important to leverage on these partnerships based on the strengths and the resources of each partner. And it goes back to the same points that both Michelle and Mira have mentioned. So, for example, if we do have that sort of partnership between women organizations and educational institutions, then we can have more financial literacy for young women, so that maybe younger women would be directed into investing, directed into entrepreneurship. For business women, partnership with private sector can offer access to expertise, knowledge, networking. All of that can be done through these partnerships. Another point also that goes back to the point that Mira have mentioned about providing funding to entrepreneurs. Having this partnership between women organizations and banks or financial institutions can provide this stable source of funding for business women and entrepreneurs. So I think it's absolutely important to leverage on these relationships and work on establishing them.
Amazing. I do think that these type of partnerships are indeed important, especially in terms of advancing women's career in finance, because one entity cannot do it all on its own, especially when we talk about development issues. We always think of, government should do that. But it's a partnership, right?
It's definitely a partnership. It's definitely at different levels. It starts early, from early educational level to all the way investors and businesswomen.
Exactly, and especially about education. I think just teaching kids things about managing your everyday, just like what you get from school, how much did you spend, and if you have extras, then how can you sort of, save that? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think especially educational partnerships are super important. My young sister, she's 8 years old. She buys makeup, and then somehow one lipstick becomes 10 lipsticks, and they're sold at school. I hope no one catches her, but I fully support her. I'm like, look, at your age, all I was thinking is to get grades, and you're obviously not thinking of that at the moment, which is okay. It's okay. You don't have to be the top in school, but if you're passionate about buying things and you feel happy and you feel empowered, because I do feel a lot of time that she feels empowered, that she can provide products and she can sell them, and to her it's a priority. To her, she's like, no, I'm not necessarily. She's like, this order has to be tomorrow delivered, and my mom is like, yeah, but how can we help package it? And I'm gonna go sleep because tomorrow I have to go to school, but you guys need to be working on this. And I'm like, but we're not paid. And I see a lot of, and she keeps telling me about stories of young girls at school who bring stuff and sell them, and she wants to obviously she wants to top everyone. And I'm like, I wish there were someone who would adopt these talents. She's grade 4 now, 3. She's great.
She's a young entrepreneur.
She's super young entrepreneur, and she has a lot of colleagues who do that. And I'm like I wish someone could adopt these kids and take them and help them actually leverage on that and help that mindset and encourage it. You never know what they're going to sell in the future. They might start with lipsticks and end up establishing a huge sustainable makeup company. You never know where they end up, or something not related to makeup. And I do think, and this is where you see, and you're like, what if there were partners who are looking for these things? What if there were, other people who are interested in having more women in finance that can help these sectors, navigate since a young age, just like you mentioned. So I do think that partnership is not only on big level, it's on different levels, on level of youth and level of children. There are people who are talented. there are especially women who are talented. As we can see here, there are women who are talented in finance, and they just need that push and that extra support. So thank you for sharing that, and for listening to my sister's story. Dr. Lamis, can you provide us with your view on women in finance today? And how is, our leaderships and leaders empathize on girls' education? And I remember you shared Sheikh Fatma's story, but can you tell us more about your thoughts on this?
Well, the UAE acknowledges that in order to sustain a progressive and healthy living environment, that women should be encouraged and should be equal to men in the workforce and education. As you're aware, the population of the UAE is very small, but 50% is women, female, and 50% is male. Out of this 50%, 70% of them, they go to universities and graduate from universities at different levels, whether it's as a BS or a higher education. And 46% of that, they actually graduate from the STEM principles, which is the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we have a big population within the UAE of educated women and of women who are eager to participate in the workforce, participate in the development of the UAE as general, whether it is in the government sector, whether it is in the private sector, or actually whether it is at home teaching and being a role model for their children. I really don't, this is my personal belief that a mother is more important than being successful in any workforce or being successful in being. The mother should be mainly educating because she is a role model for her children. So the children will grow up looking at their mother, seeing what she has achieved, what she has been educated, how she's been managing her life, her finance. And it's not something new to the UAE women in finance, because if you go back to history, our culture, our way of living forced the women to be able to manage all of that by themselves, because men used to go for fishing or for pearl diving for a very long time, and without even knowing when they're coming back. It depends on the environment, depends on the weather, it depends on their what they get from their trips. So women were, as we call them today, one-man show, where they used to be able to manage their family, manage the finance of 6 months without any income, manage their way of living, be a role model for their children. So it's not something new to the UAE that women are so progressive in the finance sector. It's something, I think, in our nature, in our way of bringing up, that we should be able to manage all of that. And amazingly, that in the finance sector, 70% of the employment is female, which is something maybe higher than many of the more advanced countries in the world. And the literacy percentage in the UAE within the female is, I think now it's around 97 or 98%, which is even a very big improvement on a country that is so young. I mean, don't forget that UAE, we're just celebrating our 52nd establishment, or 52nd anniversary. So for such a young country to have so much advancement and so much women in the workforce, in the finance, in the education, graduates from university, whether they're local university or international university. And this is something not new. And our father, Sheikh Zayed Allah Rahmah, if you allow me to quote his say, he said that nothing makes me happy than to see women assume their rightful role in society and fulfill their potential. Nothing should stop the progress of women. Women have equal rights to men in assuming top positions that befit their abilities and qualifications. So this is the attitude of our leaderships. This is the attitude of our country, and I think we have proven that we can do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And on the point of mothers, I'd like to quote something from our Arabic common culture, something that we say, الأم مدرسة إذا أعددتها أعددت شعبا طيب الأعراق. It means mother is a school. If you make a great mother, then you created a great nation. And I'd like thank you for quoting Sheikh Zayed. I think it is always amazing to remind ourselves that gender equality is inherent to our culture, to our teachings, and to us as people in this region. Before we end, and I'm sad that we will have to end soon, I'd like to ask each of you about, there's a lot of myths about women in finance. I'd like to ask you to tell us about a myth about women in finance and how you'd like to challenge it. And I'd like to start with Miss Michelle.
I think you should come back to me.
Okay, here we go. Mira?
Maybe instead of like a myth or some of the challenges that we see today and how we can overcome them, or maybe a myth. One of the myths that we, yeah.
Oh my God, I want to give you my mic.
Women are emotional, like she said. Or, for example, that women don't support other women. That's one of the myths that we hear a lot. However, my team today, I have two of my women here from my team that are here today, and most of my team are women. And the one thing that I say, and I think this is something that we learned from our leadership as well in Mubadala, is that if I can be 1% of your success and participate in your career advancement and your journey, then I can sit back and say that I've been a good leader. So it doesn't matter if my team is made up of men or women. As long as I can help them advance and do well, that is for me a success.
Amazing, amazing. And I completely agree with both of you. I think, I do think that there is this misconception about us being emotional. And that is completely, I mean, emotions are important for everyone. We all should be emotional at some point, you guys. But look at parliaments and look at who yells the most. That's all I'm going to say. Wafad, is there any misconception or myth that you'd like to clarify? Something that comes to mind?
There are some myths about how it's a very pressured industry, and there's a lot of pressure when women can't handle it. And I would say it's completely wrong. A few of the as Mira have mentioned, our bank CEO is a female. Few of the very top positions in the banks that I operate in are held by women, and they're doing the best that they can do. It's so the fact that women cannot handle the pressure is a complete myth. The other myth is that it's a male-dominated industry. We're taking over.
Exactly. We are taking over, and we've been doing it quietly. Doctor, would you like to share with us a myth?
From my experience, the myth is that women are not so productive, women don't take decisions so quickly. And actually, on the contrary, I think women are very straightforward, very thoughtful. And look at today's event. Most of the deals or most of a contract that was signed were signed within the female top presenting top companies. So the myth that we are more emotional or we are not good at maths, women usually they take the more arty subjects rather than the science subject, which is not proven at all. As I said, 46% of the graduates are in the STEM principles, so we are educated, we can take decisions. My advice is that our generation, we thought it was difficult and we had put the stepstones for the younger generation, but I think the younger generation have a more challenging and more difficult path to prove themselves in the workforce or in general.
Amazing. Michelle?
To add to Dr. Lamis's point, sorry, Michelle.
No worries.
2/3 of the COP presidency team here, the
Amazing.
UAE COP presidency team, is made up of women. And very young women as well. So we're very proud to say that.
Exactly. And a lot of the negotiators in the team are women. So, yep. Michelle, a quick one?
So to end, I think that sometimes women get put into this box of, they have this skill set that they're really good at. And so they get put into certain roles and those roles only. But my what I've seen is that women are good at everything. Just give us the opportunity and we'll show you.
And that is an amazing note to end this session on. I think women are good in everything and women can do anything. And as Wafa said, we are taking over the finance world and we're not going to apologize for that. So thank you all for attending. And I've really enjoyed the session and I'd like to thank our dear panelists for their amazing insight. Thank you.